Hello. So this is Saturday day one. What I'm gonna be doing for the next 4 weeks at least is to practice speech therapy so that I would articulate better and stop mumbling and be able to communicate better and yeah, most importantly, build confidence because I feel very insecure if insecure about whether the other person understands me or not, especially because of my second language and I do have accent as well, so that's stopping me from talking to people. I got better at using body language, but yeah, I wanna improve it better because yeah, it was dismal when I was talking with Calvin. It's definitely like the fact that I was having an alcohol and I have a little allergic reaction to alcohol and my nasal congestion goes bad, so it makes it harder to practice. And I think when I'm articulating, my pronunciation gets worse because I'm not practicing it. Well, I'm not focusing on speaking better, so that's double bad. So what I'm gonna be doing is every Saturday I'll be reading out the text loud uh, to see the improvement with the practice. So I'll be practicing maybe 5 to 10 minutes a day. Uh, I'll say I'll try to do 10 to practice those voice therapist, voice therapist suggestions such as tongue twisting or um, those fast verse like tic tac toe or because like my problem is yes pronunciation, but the worst is mumbling. So it's like KKMWRS. Those are the worst issue, and if I can nail that, and then I can get away with a lot of my pronunciation issues. So yeah, here it is. So I'm gonna be choosing this Beyond Good and Evil, and maybe from this another favorite text, Zen Mind and Beginner's Mind. So it's a good way for me to review the book as well. So I'm gonna be choosing this chapter, chapter 6, What is Noble. It could be true that the more I read the same text passage, I get improvement anyway. But let's just focus on the pronunciation. So I try to speak out loud like this too in the beginning to see if there's any improvement in general as well. So let's compare. So yeah, I noticed like measurement is a big crucial part of try like motivating myself as well as changing the strategy, what and deciding what's working and what not. So it's go ahead. Let's get going. So okay, every elevation of the type man has hitherto been the work of an aristocratic society, and so it will always be a society believing in a long scale of gradation of rank and differences of worth among human beings, and requiring slavery in some form or other, without the pathos of distance, such as grows out of the incarnated differences of classes, out of the constant outlooking and downlooking of the ruling caste on subordinates and instruments, and out of their equally constant practice of obeying and commanding, of keeping down and keeping at the distance that other more mysterious pathos could never have arisen, the longing for an ever new widening of distance within the soul itself, the formation of ever higher, rarer, farther, more extended, more comprehensive states. In short, just the elevation of the type man, the continued self-surmounting of man to use a moral formula in a supermoral sense, to be sure, one must not resign oneself to any humanitarian illusions about the history of the origin of our aristocratic society. That is to say, the preliminary condition for the elevation of the type man. The truth is hard. Let us acknowledge unprejudicedly how every higher civilization hitherto has originated. Man with a still natural nature, barbarians in every terrible sense of the word, man of prey, still in possession of unbroken strength of will and desire for power, threw themselves upon weaker, more moral, more peaceful race, perhaps trading or cattle rearing communities, or upon old mellow civilizations in which the final vital force was flickering out in brilliant fireworks of wit and depravity. At the commencement, the noble caste was always the barbarian caste. Their superiority did not consist first of all in their physical, but in their physical, psych, psych, psychical, I'm not sure about this word, how to pronounce it, psychical power. They were more complete man, which at every point also implies the same as more complete beast. Corruption as the indication that anarchy threatens to break out among the instincts, and that the foundation of the emotions called life is conversed, is something radically different according to the organization in which it manifests itself. When, for instance, an aristocracy like that of France at the beginning of the Revolution flung away its privileges with sublime disgust and sacrificed itself to the excess of its moral sentiments, it was corruption. It was really only the closing act of the corruption which had existed for centuries, by virtue of which that aristocracy had abdicated step by step its lordly prerogative, pro, pre, prerogatives, and lowered itself to a function of royalty. In the end, even to its decoration and parade dress. The essential thing, however, in a good and healthy aristocracy is that it should not regard itself as a function either of the kingship or the commonwealth, but as the significance and highest justification thereof. That it should therefore accept with good conscience the sacrifice of a legion of individuals who for its sake must be suppressed and reduced to imperfect man to slaves and instruments. Its fundamental belief must be precisely that society is not allowed to exist for its own sake, but only as a foundation and scaffolding by means of which a select class of beings may be able to elevate themselves to their higher duties, in general to a higher existence, like those sun-seeking climbing plants in Java. They're called matador, which encircle an oak so long and so often with their arms, until at last, high above it, but supported by it, they can unfold their tops in the open light and exhibit their happiness. To refrain mutually from injury, from violence, from exploitation, and put one's will on a par with that of others. This may result in a certain rough sense in good conduct among individuals when the necessary conditions are given, namely the actual similarity of the individuals in amount of force and degree of worth, and their correlation within one organization. As soon However, as one wished to take this principle more generally, and if possible, even as a fundamental principle of society, it will immediately disclose what it really is, namely a will to the denial of life, a principle of dissolution and decay. Here, one must think profoundly to the very basis and resist all sentimental weakness. Life itself is essentially appropriation, injury, conquest of the strange and weak, suppression, severity, obtrusion of peculiar forms, incorporation, and at the least putting in the mildest exploitation. But why should one forever use precisely these words on which for ages a disparaging purpose has been stamped? Even the organization within which, as was previously suppressed, the individuals treat each other as equal, it takes place in every healthy aristocracy, must itself, if it be a living and not a dying organization, do all that towards other bodies which the individuals within it refrain from doing to each other. It will have to be the incarnated will to power. It will endeavor to grow, to gain ground, attract to itself, and acquire ascendancy, not owning to any morality or immorality, but because it lives and because life is precisely will to power. On no point, however, is the ordinary consciousness of Europeans more unwilling to be corrected than on this matter. People now rave everywhere, even under the guise of science, about coming conditions of society in which the exploiting character is to be absent. That sounds to my ears as if they promised to invent a mode of life which should refrain from all organic functions. Exploitation does not belong to a depraved or imperfect and primitive society. It belongs to the nature of the living being as a primary organic function. It is a consequence of the intrinsic will to power, which is precisely the will to life. Granting that as a theory, this is a novelty. As a reality, it is the fundamental fact of all history. Let us be so far honest towards ourselves.